Good afternoon. Welcome to today's board meeting. If we can all please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If I could have the roll call, please.
Peggy Bossy.
Here.
Paul Godwin.
Here.
Chris Huster.
Here.
Karen Kellum.
Here.
Dan Downey.
Here.
This meeting is a meeting of the Deer Park Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Due to the COVID-19 national pandemic, community input is being suspended for this meeting. However, we have had many comments submitted to the board over the past several days, and we will consider all these comments this evening as we have our discussion and make our decisions about the upcoming school year. We want to thank all of our parents and community members who took the time to share their thoughts and opinions.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving tonight's meeting agenda, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent report.
No superintendent report, but we obviously will be talking about the opening of schools here in just a minute.
All right, thank you. On to board discussion, reopening of schools.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I know it's been a whirlwind week since our last board meeting. Really considering all the thoughts, opinions, ideas regarding the opening of schools. Mrs. Huster said it previously, but we have had a lot of feedback from our community, from our parents, from our staff, and we want to thank everybody for that feedback. Obviously, it gives us a lot to think about as we make these difficult decisions. Last week, we left the board meeting, and the direction really given to me and to my administrative team was to really start thinking about a hybrid model and what that would look like. Obviously, we've put thought into it previously, but it was really to start putting those thoughts to paper and really start etching out some of those details. And so when I submitted my board report last Friday, I submitted two different plans, version 1 and version 2, and gave you some of the details to those plans. But really, these versions, as we, and there's a couple things I guess I want to address. Last week after the board meeting, I asked my building principals to then go out and talk to their task force teams. They have a building leadership team, which is composed of their building leadership teachers, representative of at every grade level, and also their parent task force teams. I know there was some conversation. I received some emails, and I know the board had received some questions about the parent task force team. I do want to explain a little bit what that parent task force team was. As most or a lot of people know, a lot of the community knows, I believe it was early July, late June, we sent out a survey to all of our community, our parents, and we garnered over 600 responses to that survey. And that was a time for parents to really give their feedback about how they thought we should go back to school, what are some of the things we should be considering. What we then did, and we talked about this at a board meeting, was developing a parent task force team, a staff task force team, which was our building leadership team. And so from the parent task force team, what we did is we actually had several parents that reached out to us saying, we would like to be part of that team. They tuned into the board meeting, they heard about it, through their friends, whatever it might be. But we purposefully wanted to keep that team small because we got a large amount of input from the survey. Our parent task force team, really, the idea for them, the idea for us, I guess, to bring them in was to really vet our ideas and our plans through them and have them give us feedback from a parent's perspective. The parents we had on each team had kids in various grade levels. So we really, as we developed these plans, we wanted to hear their perspective as we continue to develop them. So as we left last meeting, prior to the meeting last week, our plan was to come back to school, hybrid model the first 2 weeks with all kids reporting September 8th. And that's where we had left it with the last plan that we vetted with our parent task force. We felt it was only right to go back to them and say, hey, here's what we're thinking now based on the latest feedback, and especially after we received the results of the DPEA survey and heard loud and clear from a lot of our teachers. So that's what the parent task force team was all about. So I just wanted to explain that so the board was aware and also our community was aware of how that team was developed and why we had it. So we met this week with our task force, back to school task force teams, both parents and teachers, with the direction that, if we were to go virtual, what do we think? What does it look like? Here's what we proposed. Initially, we had first 2 weeks of school, A day on Monday, Tuesday, an off day Wednesday, and a B day Thursday, Friday, divided by student last name. We had a lot of talk around that, logistics, what it looks like. The idea then also came up from other people that were on both parent and teacher task force. Well, have we thought about morning, afternoon? Could we do an AM and PM? The thought was brought up, Reading is doing something similar. We had a lot of conversation around that. But at the end of the day, and hearing from everyone involved, it was split, don't get me wrong. It was, some parents were for coming back to school 5 days a week. Some parents were for an AA off BB, like we have plans. Some parents were, we want AM, PM. But at the end of the day, the overarching general feeling, if we were to go hybrid, that an AA off BB day was, it was safer because we could do our cleaning on the normal days, Wednesday deep cleaning. I do want to explain that too. I've had that question. What is the difference between cleaning during the day and a deep cleaning? Well, during the day, there'll be, and Mr. Conover, if you have any clarifications, you can interject, but I'll try to explain it the best I can. There will be times where we use a fogger in a classroom that's a disinfectant, okay? Kills all the germs. Touches every surface, kills all the germs. Doesn't necessarily remove the bacteria, the viruses. It kills them. On Wednesday, we will go in and wipe, when I say deep clean, we wipe down everything. Even stuff that was fogged or just disinfected, you wipe it all down. You actually remove all the germs from all the surfaces. Where we may be disinfecting on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday as time allots. We may be using the fogger to disinfect. It hits every surface, kills every germ, but we haven't actually went in and removed the germs. Does that make sense? So that's the difference between a cleaning and a deep cleaning. But the AABB allows us to do that. It also makes sure that we limit the cross-contamination. If you bring in a morning group and an afternoon group, you may have a teacher who's working within 6 feet of a kid in the morning or a group of kids. Then we have another group of kids coming in the afternoon working with a group of kids, and they may be within 6 feet for whatever possible reason, and that teacher all of a sudden tests positive. Well, now we have 2 groups that are potentially exposed. So we said academically, if you're leaning towards academics, having a touch point with the kids every day from an AM, PM, maybe that is better. But we said overwhelmingly right now, if we're going to lean towards any direction, we need to lean towards the health and safety direction, which we felt an A day, off, B day, gives us more, it gives us a safer path. So those were the conversations that were had last week. Again, the 2 plans that I shared with you on Friday that you've had time to kind of look at and think about are the 2 plans that were mainly talked about last week. Again, that is an AA off BB and an AM PM. So at this time, I'm just going to open it up for questions from the board because I know we want to have some discussion about each of those plans and talk about the pros and cons. And at the end of the day, as I said to my administrative team this morning in our meeting, and I said to a couple parents, we want to have good discussion here, and at the end of this, I hope I have a feeling of which direction the board wants to go, and then that's what I'm going to recommend, okay? And then we would take a vote on it. So I'm going to turn it over to the board to ask questions about the plan and any other questions you might have.
Well, I have quite a few, so I don't know. I have quite a few, so I don't know if somebody else wants to go first. Go ahead. I can go first. Okay. Mr. Hartley and Mr. Giroud, you're pretty much my people I would like to ask questions for. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Hartley. If we did the morning and afternoon plan, how is this going to look with bell schedules at the high school?
Yeah, that's a good question. This was just kind of brought up at the end of last week, so just kind of thinking through it yesterday. I think we would probably have to do like a morning session, maybe like bells 1, 2, and 3 one day, and then bells 4, 5, and 6 on the other days, and then add in every other day like an advisory period, and then a 7th bell. So we would essentially have about 45 minutes for 4 bells in the morning, 45 minutes for 4 bells in the afternoon. Again, bells 1, 2, 3, 4 one day, and then 5, 6, 7 and an advisory period on every other day.
So my next question to you on this, and people that are listening, community, I am not asking these questions to go one way or the other. You know, I'm a member of this community, and I have kids in this community too, so the school, so that's why I'm asking these. How are you going to clean between bells?
In between, what do you mean?
Like, for example, if whatever plan we choose, how are you going to, kids are going to be coming in, kids are going to be going out? I think that, Mr. Phillips, you said at one point in time that every 2 hours, the doorknobs and things were going to be cleaned. Did I miss that? Or
No,
did
we
I
actually have
misconstrue
a
that?
cleaning schedule
Okay, I
for
like that.
both Amity and the junior senior high, and it looks different at both buildings, obviously, because transitions are different, where you have 7 bells at the junior senior high, and you have 2 classes, basically.
Okay, I like those posted because I
Okay.
like parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those
Okay,
are
right,
some
because-
details that we all have those documents. We can certainly share those
Okay, I think
documents with
because
you.
we're making decisions tonight. Okay, Mr. Druid,
Yes, ma'am.
I really do like you. So we're just going to start with that.
It's a good start.
Okay? I'm going to start at the top of my day, and that's champions. I heard the champions would like to come back. I also am concerned about how we're going to make this work because we are not doing cross-contamination one way or the other, morning or afternoon, with kids moving outside of their classrooms. So my expectation, and that's not the board's expectation, it's Chris Schuster's expectation, is when those kids are in champions, they are separated by their classes, not the grade levels, because, okay, so, and I hope the champions can figure that out, and I'm hoping that you can help them figure that out.
And I'm going to jump in there at times as well, because I know we were part of the conversation, Mr. Druid, and I think, Michelle, were you there? Patty was there last week, so we met with champions, and we did get into the kind of the nuts and bolts of if we have champions, what does that look like? You know, they even threw out ideas, well, if you're on an AA, off BB, we could have a day camp during the day for the B kids when it's A, and we just know that won't work because we need our space. You know, obviously when we're trying to social distance, we're going to use every space of our building that we have to be able to space out. So then it came down to morning and afternoon, before school and after school. Mm-hmm. And, you know, initially the conversation was, well, we think we could do into 2 grade levels, K and 1 together, 2 and 3, and we pushed back on that as well and said, look, you know, we're trying really hard to keep our kids separated during the day. It would be disadvantageous to us to bring kids in the morning and have them mixed together and then try to keep them in a pods. So we really pushed towards class separation. We got to the point where they said, well, we think we might be able to do it by grade level. Knowing now, we hearing your expectation, Ms. Schuster, and keeping kids in classes, you know, the way we thought through it with champions, you know, they said economically that's not feasible to be able to have enough people for each group. But if you can be creative and have, you know, a person that oversees maybe the kindergarten and first grade group, but within those groups they're broken down into the individual classrooms, you know, maybe that could be a potential way to do it. I will say, you know, at the end of the conversation, when we all really agreed, and champions said that they've experienced this in other school districts, if you don't have champions, because parents need, if they're using champions, it's because they need the before and after school daycare. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have it, they're going to go somewhere else, whether it's kinder care or whatever other daycare providers there are. And they're going to be mixing with not just Deer Park kids, but lots of kids throughout the city. And so they said, we can do a much better job at keeping our kids into those pods than anywhere else where they're going to be mixing with multiple other kids. And so we thought that was a very good point, that parents are going to utilize another service if they're not utilizing champions, and we'd rather have control over it. But I hear your request as a community and board member.
Well, because I'm going to say, as kids are going to their classes, we're keeping them in their classrooms during the day, okay? They are staying with their classes, they're doing things with their classes, they're going to be doing lunch, they're going to be doing, lunch is on my list, recess within their class and that. So I feel that they need to get creative because we're asking the teachers and the parents to make decisions that their kids are going to be in these classes at this point in time with no other students, but in the morning or afternoon, we're not doing that. So just let that one go. Okay, let's go on to lunches. The high school was eating in the cafeteria, okay? And as it was set up, the high school teachers had strongly suggested that because one of the things is you come in, you bring your food in, you take off your mask, you eat your food, whatever. So I'm just making sure that that's exactly what's happening in Amity too. And how is that schedule going to look? Because I know, Mr. Hartley, you had an extra lunch. True?
At this point, yes.
Okay.
So, so I guess the question is, how would it look to eat in the cafeteria?
Well, how will it look to look in the cafeteria? Because the high school's not eating in their rooms, and, you know, we're kind of one whole district here, so if we're going to follow the same things, guidelines as the high school about not eating in the rooms, not having, you know, whatever mass food, whatever out, I'm just making sure that we are going to figure out a way to do Amity. Because I kind of heard that maybe we weren't, and I'm just kind of curious.
So,
I'm smiling under my mask.
no. So yeah, our back to the school force, we looked at a lot of options, and one of those key, with our building, we're K through 6, and so we have seven grades that we're trying to get through compared to the high school.
They've got 6. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. I'm just telling you, they've got 6. So we only have 6 too because we're not
But, sorry,
doing
we have
that.
7, because we have 1st through 6th grade and then kindergarten.
But we're not having kindergarten for lunch.
Okay.
Okay.
It-
I'm just being honest.
Okay.
you know,
Yeah,
I-
Yeah,
and
so-
just to clarify,
Yeah.
you know, we haven't gotten to that part of the plan yet,
Correct.
but one of the recommendations within these hybrid plans is that kindergarten would go AM, PM, and in that case, they wouldn't eat lunch at school.
And so if that is on the table, then that does open up, it frees things up to explore those options of getting kids in the cafeteria. And it's something that we can make happen.
Okay, good. Okay, so now I'm on to do specials. Okay, I would like to know about specials at Amity. And I would like to know how they're going to look because if you read the Enquirer today more so than any other day, as they were talking about music, athletics, band, and that you know, the distancing you have to do. So I guess I'm going to say this at the beginning so that you don't feel like I'm attacking you. But, you know, as of this time, 2 weeks from today, our kids have already been in school 1 day. So as we're meeting tonight, I really want to know the specifics of every plan that is going on so that our parents can now make their decision by Friday. So I'm not attacking, I'm just saying,
that's
I
fine.
really want to know what is happening in each of the specials, and then I want to know, well, let's start with, just pick whichever special you want to talk about.
Well, so I guess I hear from you the importance of our specials, and we agree with that. We have laid out plans with our BTS and looking at how do we have specials and limit kind of the exposure to teachers and the spread. We are looking at a rotation, a 5-week rotation, which the students would go to the special for the entire week versus what we ran in the past where they would go and see each special 1 day a week.
Okay.
In terms of what specials look like within there, you know, going to lean heavily on our teachers and instructional aides to kind of lay out what that looks like. Those are the experts in those areas, and you know, they've got a mind on how they can take their curriculum and adapt it to what's going on.
So can you share that? Because I asked Mr. Phillips this. We've had this conversation today, actually. And he said that he talked to some of the specials areas, and that was a week ago today. And so I want to know if they, I feel very strongly that I would like to know what was going to be on this catalog. I would like to know what's happening in music, and I would like to know, well, I guess music and art, so.
You know, and that's something that's interesting because I think your mind shifts to, and if you go 100% capacity, you go 50% capacity with your students, you know, in terms of how you plan for that. in the long term. And so
But
I think,
I'm just curious, as we're here tonight, that we're expecting parents to make decisions on plans, and I would think that if I come to you and I'm asking what's happening, that your teachers, and I'm not, and listen, teachers know I love you, but I really truly believe that parents need to know these things, because I'm curious as to how many minutes are there now going to be between specials so that kids are going down the hall, how are you going to clean the art room before the next art group came back in? You know, Josh, these are questions parents
Sure.
that have not asked. These are my questions, so I'm just letting you know, this is not something.
our specialist teachers, they're awesome people.
I know they are.
reach out to other people, and they're stealing ideas left and right from other people. One creative idea that was out there in terms of, you get your materials, whatever that is, we number them, and those are your materials for the week. And so there's no crossover in terms of the sharing of those materials,
Okay.
which cuts down on the amount of disinfecting that has to go. By having us in 5 days in a row, that also cuts down on that turnover for those disinfecting.
So there would be
And so,
there'd be the teachers would see 6 different groups of kids a day.
they would see 6 groups of kids
Okay.
if there is no kindergarten.
Okay,
Yes.
right,
they would
exactly.
see
And
those-
as I'm asking this, I'm just doing this
But-
so that the public can
But the
understand.
kindergarten, so the first grade wouldn't share the same materials as the second grade.
Right,
And so that helps cut down on that piece. They also won't be shared across students with
right.
that
And
numbering
materials
system.
aren't my concern. I'm concerned that if I'm in the art room, where the table, we've got a second grade group in there, and then, a third grade group or a fourth grade group is coming in. How is there time in between there for those tables to be wiped down?
And so right now there's a 5-minute gap, and with our current schedule, that is with kindergartners attending specials. If the kindergartners were to go half day, that would open that gap up to around 10 minutes, I believe.
So if we did morning and afternoon, that would still follow the same path?
If kindergartners went morning, afternoon.
No, I meant the whole school.
Specials, if we go the whole school, then we have to reconfigure how we organize and we pattern specials to get kids through. And that becomes, just because currently how our specials are laid out,
Right.
it's a time frame that goes across the entire week. And so if first grade is in the PM for their special, then we have to reconfigure that, because those AM kids would never see their special.
Well, and I'm just going to state there, that cuts down on how many hours of instruction, however we feel that we want to do that.
A couple comments that I wanted to make
Okay.
to the AM, PM, and then also A day, off, B day, when we're talking about specials. The question has been asked of us regarding specials. Well, with the lost academic time in the spring, according to some parents, when we had to go remote in March, April, May, and with the beginning of if we're going hybrid, we're losing academic time according to some, and yet we are, kids aren't in school the same amount of minutes. Could we take our specials teachers and use them to help with intervention groups, to help support our regular ed teachers and not have specials and extend academic time? That's been brought up. And I will tell you, if we would go all day for a full day for AA, off, BB, having a special allows our teachers to have their plan period, which is by contract we have to give them. At the elementary level, it's 200 minutes a week. At the high school level, they have to have one plan equivalent to one of their bells. If you go at AM and PM, that changes things a little bit, because you can give your planning bell and your lunch period in between the AM session and the PM session. So it does change things a little bit, where you could lose your specials and extend academic time. Obviously, that would not be what our specials teachers want. Mrs. Fowler is a PE teacher. She's an expert in physical education. That's what she teaches. That's what she knows. She's not a math expert or an English expert. Same thing with Hannah Lane, who is art, and Taylor McNally, who is band or music choir. Regarding band and choir, you asked that question, what that class could look like. We've met a couple times now with Mr. Suddendorf, Mrs. McNally. Last week, Pat Bauer, Mr. Bauer was in on the conversation as well. And Mr. Vetter is back in action now. He's sat his 60 days out. As most people know, he was retiree hire, and he's back online. And so I asked them, as we met last week, I said, I asked them to continue to think about and brainstorm what a band and a choir class looks like, a performance-less band and choir, because we know the restrictions on performances. We know that there are some bands that are still performing. I think Mason's band is still performing. There are some that are going to learn their competition march, but without playing, but listen to the music track and do it. There are a lot of ways that you could be creative, and I think one school, I can't remember who it was, they were renting tents outside and spreading chairs out 10 feet apart so that they could play, because that was one of the directives, one of the recommendations from the health department was that if you're going to play, you have to be 10 feet apart. I asked our teachers to really think about what that looks like from a performance-less perspective, because we know, and based on what everyone, the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, band and choir singing and blowing into an instrument obviously projects those particles, those respiratory droplets, and that is one of the easiest ways to spread this virus. So the directive out of last meeting was to think about creatively what band and choir look like. We know it's going to look different, and we explored every possible scenario. And I heard from Mr. Vetter later in the week. Mrs. McNally, Mr. Bauer, and Mr. Suddendorf were in the original conversation on Monday, but Mr. Vetter followed up with a conversation, I think, on Tuesday last week. And so I asked them to get back to me early this week after they had a chance to meet. I sent them an email this afternoon, late this afternoon. Haven't heard back from them on their proposal yet, but I kind of put that ball in their court to say, tell us what this is going to look like, because obviously we need to be able to tell our kids we want to have band, we want to have choir. Some places have just canceled those classes altogether. And honestly, one of the early conversations I had with Mr. Suddendorf, he said, worst case scenario, we could table choir and I could run a study hall. Obviously that's not what he wants to do, but Mr. Suddendorf's a team player, and he said, I'll do anything that we need to do that makes it work. But I asked them to brainstorm a creative way that we could have this, whether it's learning about the history of band, the history of choir.
And Jay, I understand all that, and I know you've done your due diligence. I'm again just going to reiterate the fact that we are expecting parents to make a decision by Friday, and we don't have a concrete plan really out on a lot of these things. And I'm comfortable because I work with you all, and I know you and trust you, but I feel that, unfortunately, I think we need somehow or other, and I recognize we have to make a decision tonight, that I don't want to listen to it, have a creative plan. I mean, I know you're saying that, but I just want you to hear my frustration, the fact that, our teachers are coming back on Thursday. That's on my list here about, what's happening with them from next Thursday, Friday, all next week. So I just feel like that's kind of my frustration, and it is that I would like to know that Amity will be doing lunches in the cafeteria. We'll figure it out. We will be doing that. I would like to know that we are doing the specials, but 5 minutes of cleaning in between classrooms. And I'm a special believer, and I agree with Kaylin on that, and the fact that she went to school, as did all her teachers, to get a 4-year undergraduate degree, and many of them getting masters in their passion in what they do best. So I completely understand that. I think my thing tonight is the fact that as we're laying this out, and I talked to Mr. Phillips about the fact that, I was going to share these things because I'm thinking parents could be saying the same thing, and whereas you might think, well, lunch in the cafeteria, lunch in the room, that's not that big of a deal. No, that's kind of a big deal to some people, okay? What are we going to do about the specials? Who's going to be doing the rooms? These are things that we need to know before Friday.
And here's what I would say to that.
I know what you're going to say.
Last Tuesday, we had this board meeting. It hasn't even been 1 week where we turned our original plan on its head, which was to come back in hybrid for 2 weeks and then have every kid report September 8th. We have turned this thing on its head. Our teachers are still on summer vacation. I was talking to Matt Suddendorf, who was sitting on a porch in Texas, because he took the only time he had to be able to talk to me. So a lot of these details, that's our job. We're going to have this thing figured out, and we're going to communicate it to parents before we start. But I think what parents need to know is, if we're going hybrid, are we having band and choir? We are. We'll tell you what the details of that class are going to look like. It's not going to look the same. And I think we've said that a lot, quite frequently over the last few
And I'm
weeks.
fine
It's
with
not
that.
going to look the same.
I just want, again, like I'm saying, I just want to know about cleanliness. I'm not attacking. What I'm saying is these are things that are going through my mind, and I'm thinking they're going through other people's minds too. Okay, I guess I'm going to go with AM and PM arrival and dismissals. Will they just be coming through the regular door, getting their temperature taken, and somebody will take them, escort them to the room, or they go to the rooms, or how does that roll?
So we're looking at, we've got 4 areas that kids can enter the building. Just,
Okay.
we've added an additional area. We've got 2 no-touch thermometers. The people that will allow, our teachers or aides who are kind of running the entrance are going to ask the student, hey, how you feeling today? You know, because it's not only just about the fever, but it's also about how you feeling, and kind of get the response from that. We'll take their temperature. If they are under 100 degrees, we will send them in. We've got arrows on the floor kind of directing them to stay on the right side of the hallway, and send them straight up to their classes.
Okay, so I guess if there's 4 areas that come in and we have 2 thermometers, what happens to the other 2 areas, or am I?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have 2 for each entrance.
Okay, bingo.
At a minimum.
Okay, great. Okay.
And can I add one comment to that? We, one of the things that we've talked about as an administrative team is the best way to do that with kids coming in. I think we have 80 thermometers or something like that. Is that right, Mr. Stahl? And so what we said the first week when they're coming in, really the idea was, especially with the other plan, we wanted to get their temperature as they were entering the building, because that clock starts ticking. If you were coming back all kids, we said you have to quarantine if you're exposed to somebody for 15 minutes or more within 6 feet. So really, as kids entered the building, that clock is ticking.
Right.
So if we could take their temperature as they're entering the building, at least we have that piece of the puzzle done. But we have a second solution. If kids are getting backed up at the front doors, and we thought, the first
6
week.
feet apart, right?
Yeah, and if they're getting backed up at the front doors entering, if it's too slow, then we also have kind of plan B, which would be to have the teachers take the temperatures when they entered the homeroom. But that's our plan B. We don't like that plan a whole lot. We'd like to take their temperatures as they're entering the front doors, because that gets them right away before they get in the building.
And I think we already told the public that's what we were doing, so we're, that's an option. I'm glad we're bringing that up right now. Okay, I want to tell you guys, thank you. Shane, is the same thing happening at the high school, where you're going to have thermometers at each of the buildings, and kids will report? Do they report straight to their lockers? Do they report straight to the classrooms? And how does that look? And this is both this is whether we do hybrid or we do half day.
Yeah, I think it does maybe say on the plan that was released that students would go directly to their first bell. So that would be their plan. We would split them up. Students would go to different entrances, roughly based on grade level, especially because, as you know, at the junior, senior high
Right.
school, there's different areas. So we would have 4 different entrances. We'd split them up, and then they would go directly to their first bell. And then after first bell, they'd be able to report to their lockers and go to their other classes.
So at the high school with your teachers, or you'll have other people that will be monitoring lunch? I'm just curious. That wasn't on my list.
Are
I'm
we
just
going to have,
asking.
no, we'll have administrators monitoring all that.
Okay. Okay, I think that people worked hard, and it's been a long thing, and I feel like it's difficult, and this is my personal thing, that in July, when we put this force together, of people working on it and that, no, there was no big given plan, okay? There was no paper that says this is how you do something. I think that everything that everybody has done is for the best interest and safety of our students and making sure they get a good education. So I feel comfortable in that. I feel that as we're moving forward this week, that it's important that all these things be out there on the website so that parents can see when they go to make a decision, because this is a big decision coming this Friday. And so I guess that you did say about library, and I think you said tell me what's going on with library then.
Well, I
Josh,
do want to
just-
comment, you've made the comment a couple times that it's a big decision this Friday, so we haven't talked about that yet, But if the board were to say that we were going to go hybrid, we would open up
Thank you.
the choice, the school choice, because parents have been choosing. The deadline was last Wednesday, but we know if we were to go hybrid, that could change some people's feelings about bringing their kids back to school. Parents who didn't want to send their kids to school because of our inability to social distance, now that we have that ability, they may want to change their mind. So
Right.
if we were to go hybrid, we would open that final forms back up, and we would give the parents till Friday to change their choice, and they
And
can do
even
that
if we
within
did
5.
morning and afternoon, I mean, because that's part of.
Any
the-
hybrid,
Any
if we were to go from our, vary from our original plan and go to a hybrid model, whatever you guys would decide, we will open that back up. So I did want to make that comment. And regarding the media center,
Yeah.
yeah, that was your next question. We've had quite a few conversations regarding the media center. Obviously, having kids come in and peruse and stand next to each other and touch books and other kids touch books isn't ideal. I think I heard, we had this conversation, and I think I was reaffirmed today, the library is back open. The Deer Park
Okay,
Library is
thank you.
back open for traffic to come back in and check out books.
Okay.
But we've had ideas, especially at the high school level, of almost a pre-order where, they would tell Mrs. Coates what they want. She would pull it from the shelves, give it to them. The elementary is a little different. Kids aren't going to know probably what books they want for the most part. So we'd have to come up with some other system or routine for that. But just know, if we were kind of mirroring what the Deer Park Library is doing, I'm not saying we are, but if we did, they did open back up for service, maybe we could have small groups of kids go at a time or something to that effect. But, we would, again, it would be different from what we've done in the past.
Well, that's fine with me. And now one more question, technology, will the children be taking their tech to the technology class?
Yeah, that would be our plan, so that
Right.
so we're not having to wipe down technology. They would take their Chromebook from their homeroom to their technology
And
class.
then if whatever plan we do, whether it's morning, afternoon, if it's morning, afternoon, the expectation, well, maybe morning, afternoon, they don't have to take the computer home that night unless they have to do extra work because we're not in school that long. And then if we do the AB program, that they would make sure that they bring the computer back the next day they come.
Yeah, we
Okay.
would, if we deploy Chromebooks, we would need them back. I say that daily because we would want to be able to utilize them in the classroom. And that's big responsibility, coming back charged, ready to go. Have to build some good routines there.
That's all right, I think we can do that. And Jay, one more question there, and then I promise. When would we be dispersing Chromebooks to the people that choose to go online?
Devon, do we have that time frame yet?
So with Chromebooks, we're actually prepping those this week. We're going to try to get those rolled out when school starts. The only delay that we're going to see is just making sure that they have everything application-wise that they need in case. We need to do some work from home just to make sure that that capability is there at school and here.
Okay, but my question is,
Sure.
the people that are choosing not to come to Deer Park, but they're going to use that other plan, will they have their computers before school starts so they can start their online
Probably
learning
within the
same
first
day
week.
as us?
Yep, within the
So
first
we'll
week
be
of school.
going, passing out those next week?
Hopefully. We're going to have a date later this week. The biggest thing, like I said, is we have to so there's 700 Chromebooks at Amity and at the high school, and we have to go through every single one this week to get them ready. I'm getting the team on that as we speak.
Dr. Warso, how many families have indicated of the virtual families that they need a Chromebook from us? Do you have that?
Miss,
A pretty high percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but we sort of envisioned something like what we did last spring where we set up something where people could drive through and pick up and check them out.
And just so the board knows and the community knows, right now, we've had 1,100 forms completed out of 1,256. So we're still missing 156, but of those, 278 students have chosen to go virtual or remote learning. So you could estimate out of 278, you're probably going to have about 250 Chromebooks to deploy to those remote learning kids.
so we could get those done first so that they can start at the same time as regular
Yep.
kids. Okay, Ms. Easter's done.
For now.
Well, you're right. I'm a learner.
With either one of the hybrid plans, The calendar update stated that the hybrid plan will be extended indefinitely until conditions permit a safe return to school for all students.
Yeah, so in the initial proposal that I sent to you, we said indefinitely, and there's a reason for that, and I know, Mrs. Bossa, you and I had a conversation earlier. We didn't want to say first quarter or end of the first semester, because really, we're going to review this weekly. And if conditions change, that would allow us, because our ultimate goal, we want all of our kids here. We want them here every day, all day. And so if conditions would change, say the third week of school, miraculously the coronavirus disappears. We want to be able to pivot and say, everybody, you're coming back to school starting next Monday. So I didn't want to say end of the first quarter we'll review, because if it's midway through the first quarter, I don't want to be held to that. I want to be able to bring our kids back. Now, I will say, and I understand your point, indefinitely sounds like a long time. When we say we're going hybrid indefinitely, some people would say, well, you pretty much feel like you're going to go for the rest of this year. That's not the case. So I think I'll change the language to say we will continuously review the conditions, and when the conditions permit, we will come back and bring our kids back full time when the conditions permit. But you know what we don't want to do, and I know the reason that we're considering this, and that was brought up at last board meeting, we know the importance of our kids being at school in front of our teachers. And through last board meeting's conversation, the feeling was that the hybrid model would allow us to be in school for the longest period of time. And it would give us the least amount of chances to have a case spring up or multiple cases spring up that make us pivot and go remote, because that's not what we want. We want our kids in school. So the hybrid model, hopefully, we think would allow us to prolong that. Now, you bring kids back all day, every day, the chances obviously are greater that you're going to have exposure and then cases flaring up, and then all of a sudden you have to pivot and go remote. That's not what we want. So back to your original question. We say indefinitely. What that means is we're going to constantly be reviewing. If it's week 5, we can come back. Let's come back week 5. If it's the end of the first quarter, let's come back to the end of the first quarter. I'm all ears if you have different language that you would like us to use, or if you would like to just stick to the end of the quarter or the end of the semester. But for me, I'd like to be able to have some flexibility to bring back kids as soon as we can.
Is that something we would have to reapprove because we're approving this plan tonight? So how does that look?
Well, when I recommend the approval, I'll go through it, and I'll just state simply, we will...
No, as far as if we decide to come back 5 days. Is that part of the approval tonight?
That would be part of the approval tonight, to be able to come back 5 days as soon as conditions allow.
Okay.
I thought of a question. I'm sorry, I've got a question. And that is the fact that when we left in the spring, it was like Thursday morning, Thursday night, boom. And our teachers did an excellent job of standing on their heads and communicating and working with our kids. I'm curious about, since our teachers should not be working because they don't start back until this Thursday. Are they then going to be working on a virtual plan so that if we take a nosedive and Jay calls us on a Thursday and says, hey, we got to close tomorrow because we've got 6 teachers out and 10 kids out? I mean, how does that look oh, here she comes, good job. How does that look?
So, and that goes to the question that I think you're going to ask a little bit later about the professional development and the in-service days later this week and all of next week with the teachers, and a lot of what we're going to be doing with them, and Shane and Josh have done a great job developing what those days are going to look like, are going to be built around best practices for blended and or remote learning. And we're bringing Emily Schillig in for a day at each building, and she's our person through Forward Edge that we contract with, that helps with all of our technology from an instructional standpoint. And she's going to spend a day at each of the buildings as well. And then our TLTs at both buildings have helped us to create a hyperdoc that has all of the different platforms that teachers can use for remote learning.
So they shared that out with the teachers already? So all the teachers have that?
They'll get it this week whenever they come back.
Okay.
Yep, on Thursday.
You know how big I am about everybody getting it together and for the first time type thing. Okay, and so then by the time we start school next week, or whatever, there will be a plan in place that if we have to go virtual, that that we're able to smoothly start right away into that. That's something.
Yeah,
we're talking
you
about.
know, that, as Dr. Warso stated, the first 7 days, so teachers come back this Thursday, they'll have Thursday, Friday this week, and all next week. There's a lot of time built in for teachers to be able to work on their Schoology platforms. At the elementary, they haven't really done a lot of work with Schoology. They've used Class Dojo and some other things, but Schoology is our learning management system. They'll understand how to upload videos, how to upload assignments. One of the other things, it's called Screencastify, which allows, it's a software that we bought. It's a district license. Teachers will have access to that and training on that. So and basically what Screencastify does is allows teachers that, you know, if they're writing notes or writing their lessons, showing their work on their smartboard, they can actually capture that and narrate that as well, talk about what they're doing. That could simply be downloaded onto a Schoology platform as well for kids to have lessons. The tools will be there for us to be able to pivot and go remote. And to add on to that, if we were to go remote, it's not going to look like it looked like in the spring.
I know it's not.
Yeah,
And that's
I
what
want the
wanted
community
make
to know
sure
that.
you know, when we pivot, if we have to pivot, I want to pivot back into all kids coming back to school. But if we have to pivot the other way, I want to make sure that our teachers have the time the next week to understand this and to do it, because to me, maybe I'm old school or whatever, but Thursday, Friday, and then you've got somebody coming in during the week and you've got other things to do. I just want to make sure that that is one of the prime things that is happening there so that we can be successful, because one way or the other, we still have to do virtual learning at home, whether you're there half-day AM, PM, whether you do the A, B period, you're still going to be responsible for getting on there and doing materials. So I just want to make sure that we have enough
And
time
I will
in there
say,
for the teachers to do that.
we backed the school year, the start of kids starting an entire week to build that time in prior to kids coming, for teachers to be able to have some of that work done. So that, I mean,
Okay.
we originally were starting kids, I think, August 17th or 18th, and we moved them back to the 24th to give our teachers that additional time.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want, I'm hoping that we pivot and we're all coming, walking in the front door, but if we're not, I want to make sure that everybody is educated equally across the board as far as teachers. Because I'm about that. Okay, now I'm done. Thank you.
So the 3 days a week that kids are not in school, what's that look like for the kids that are home, high school and
You want me to talk to that? Okay. So and you're talking about the hybrid,
do
extending
AA.
the AA off BB day. The first 2 weeks, first of all, those that have seen the plan, I'm sure most of the community has seen the plan at this point, kids are not coming to school on Wednesdays. We also do not have the expectation that teachers are going to be posting lessons or meeting with the kids virtually those first 2 weeks. Those first 2 weeks, our teachers are going to be refining their practices, their routines, their protocols, making sure that everything that they're doing is at the utmost safety standard. However, following Labor Day, we will be asking teachers, and this has been communicated, we will be asking teachers to check in with their kids. That'll be a remote learning day, and so we're going to be asking teachers to check in with their kids. Again, I've said this time and time again, it's going to look different this year because kids are only going to be actually physically in school 2 days a week. So there's going to be a lot of front loading of content when the teachers are there and instructing the kids, because when you introduce new content, you have to have the teacher there. So there's going to be a lot of front loading of new content, and the kids are going to be required to do a lot of practice and a lot of work on their own. And that's where our parents and guardians come into play. They're going to have to help facilitate some of this process. With our online learning, our remote learning group, for those families that have chosen remote learning, we call it a learning coach. Learning coach is a parent or guardian that helps set the structure and helps the kids work through, especially to start things up, work through those online lessons. There's going to need to be some support because the kids are only in school 2 days a week, and we're going to be heavily front-loading those lessons, that content, and having kids practice it at home. So whereas typically at school, you introduce a lesson, you have an assignment, you do some practice, you have time to talk through it with the teacher. That whole practice, explore, discovery piece is not as we obviously don't have much time. So you're going to introduce, instead of introducing 1 or 2 concepts a day, you might introduce 3, 4 concepts a day. And be developmentally appropriate, you know, and as I'm
Right.
talking, I'm thinking at the high school level.
Right, I figured
My
you
mind
were.
goes high
That's
school
why I'm
level.
moving you back to
Because I was a
elementary.
junior, senior high teacher,
Right.
you know, but at the elementary level, we know it has to be developmentally appropriate. Again, it's gonna look different, you know, and that's where our teachers' professionalism comes into play. They know their kids and they know what they can handle, but we have the same amount of content to get through. And we only have our students in person 2 days and connecting with them that third day, because if you're an A student, your teacher's teaching Thursday and Friday. That teacher is not going to be able to get online and meet with you and talk with you and take you through those lessons on Thursday and Friday, because they have a whole separate group of students that are at home or that are in the classroom with them. So yeah, it's definitely going to look
That
different.
first week that we start back, however we do it, that if we do the A-B thing, those A kids aren't going to have school on Monday because it's Labor Day, so they'll be B.
I do want
Got
to
that?
speak to that. So there is one day in that first quarter. We're looking at a quarter at a time. I know we're going to review constantly, but in our heads, we're looking at a quarter at a time. There's one day, which is Labor Day, where a Monday kid would really not have their classes. So what I would like to propose as part of this plan in that first quarter is that Monday, Labor Day, Tuesday and Wednesday would be A days for students, and Thursday and Friday. We would have to work really hard, maybe even have to shift some time to do a deep clean on that Wednesday night before Thursday, which I don't, Mr. Conover, we might have to pay a little overtime or something to get people in here to do a deep clean, but that would keep the kids from losing a day of instruction.
And I think then if we're going to do that, that needs to be right now, because I think one of the issues that parents are trying to decide whether I'm going to have somebody watch my children in the afternoon or the morning, or I have to hire somebody to watch my children 3 days a week. So, I see that could be a difficulty. I'm just going to roll that out, that, you say to me, I've got a babysitter that's coming Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and now I'm saying, okay, well, they're going to be in school on Wednesday, then, am I still paying you? I mean, the cost factor for daycare is astronomical, so I just want to make sure that if we're going to do that gets blown out right tonight, however we're doing.
I agree.
Okay, I got a question, and it's back to the temperatures. Okay, and then these are really small ones. The plan B you said on the temperatures. So if you decide that the door is getting too far backed up, do you just start letting kids in? Is there, over the intercom, do you let people know that, or do you let the teachers know saying, hey, these kids' temperatures haven't been checked? Or is it going to be like, you're going to see how it goes one day, then the following day you're due plan B?
Yeah, ideally, Karen, again, we had tossed around different ways to measure temperatures. Our plan A, which is what I think was in the plan, we're checking kids as they come in the building. If all of a sudden it's a disaster, it's a mess, and it's getting way, way, way backed up, and we can't I don't foresee that.
Right.
I talked to another superintendent colleague of mine whose daughter goes to a dance studio, and I think he said there was 100 girls that come in all at one time. And he said they had 2 people at the door taking temperatures, and he said it just took a minute to get kids in. He said that really, because really we looked at if you go through security at the airport, the walk-through x-ray machine, we looked at those for temperatures, and we thought maybe that could be a good investment for us. I think some school districts have an iPad that you have to come up and it has facial recognition and measures body temperature. Kids have to walk up to the iPad, look into it. We figured the best and most efficient way is going to have 2 or 3, maybe 4 people at the door with the thermometers, which, again, we have 80 thermometers, so that shouldn't be an issue. And they're touchless, scanning. We hope it works. However, if it is a complete disaster and we had to go to a plan B, the other way that we would do it would be the teachers in the first bell or homerooms taking the temperature, and kids are going to be asked to go directly to their first bell or their homeroom when they enter the building. They're going to be asked that with plan A. But with plan B, they're going to be asked to go to their first bell. We'd go around, take their temperatures, check them in, make sure they're good. If kids came in
But
late.
how are the teachers going to know to do that if they think their temperatures are being taken outside by the door?
They will know. If we go to plan B, they'll know.
They'll know.
Yeah, we'll tell them. But we hope we don't have to go to plan B. if we go to Plan B, that's going to be communicated to our entire staff, because then, the teachers we have to give, those 80 thermometers that we have are going to have to be dispersed to all of our teachers.
So should they already be dispersed before this even happens, Jim? Like, because if we got up, my foreseeable thing at Amity, I don't want to interrupt you, is that parents pull up and they don't really choose to move on down the line because they're carrying parents, and I get that. So that as you drop a child off, that's where I see the foreseeable thing as parents stopping, and then, we're going to get a backlog as we have all these kids
Yeah.
that are walking. So I'm hoping that.
I'm glad you bring that up, because that's actually one thing I did want to say as well. And Mrs. Kelms and I talked about it earlier, but even though we're taking temperatures, we're going to ask our families to self-check before they come to school. Right. The idea, and hopefully Deer Park is small. I think anybody can get to Amity Elementary in 5 minutes from anywhere in Deer Park. So hopefully a kid's not spiking a temperature in that time frame. But ideally, the parents check their kid's temperature before they leave, and we have very few high temperatures coming in the building. And, that's ideal. I'm going to say that again. Parents, we're going to ask you to self-check. We'll put that out and communicate that in our plans. But there's probably going to be a kid or two. And I know as a parent of 4 girls, 2 of them in preschool and 1 in junior high and 1 in high school, sometimes it's hard to get to all 4 of them and know what the heck's going on. So there may be a kid that a parent misses, and they come here and they're exhibiting a fever, and we're going to have to put them in our quarantine room, call the parent. We will ask that parents drop their kids off and move. Hopefully they take their temperatures. They know they're going to get in the building. If not, we're going to have to call you, and you're going to have to come back and get your kid. But yeah, to get kids through, again, if we go hybrid, there's going to be 50% less students there, so that's going to help traffic tremendously. But we still ask that you drop your child off and then leave. We'll take care of them from that point. They're going to walk to the front door. We're going to scan them. We're going to get them in their classroom.
Okay. Last question. And I don't know all the names of the daycares, but I know one I think is KinderCare. Have you been in contact with these drop off daycare services, or how's it going to work? Are they all going to be loaded on a van together? Do they have to follow rules of city, 3 feet of sitting apart in the van? Yeah, and then because it's going to be I'm sure it's not all just one age group. It's going to be a multiple of age groups that are all going to then come into Amity School. I was just wondering.
That's a good question. And what I'll do is I'll get with, I'm not sure of all the daycare providers that we actually have that deliver kids to Amity, but what I'll do is make sure to contact the ones that we know about, get all the protocols, share it, put it on a shared document so that our community and the board will know.
Because I saw Mount Carmel put something out about how they were going to be doing it before, or they were going to be doing a program, because some people aren't, because they don't want to take that risk because they do daycare or preschool during the day. So just to know how that's going to go, that would be good.
Yeah, and again, I think most Deer Park families that need childcare use our Champions program, which again, be able to house them here would help us from not having a mix of kids at these other daycare centers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll try not to get too far into the weeds. Continuing with the entrance into the buildings, assuming that one of our kids comes in and is tested positive, they're supposed to go to a holding area, one of the rooms, to wait for their parents to show up. Who takes them down and who's responsible for them while they're in their room?
Well, I can tell you where first of all, there's going to be two sections.
Right.
Officer Werger's office is going to be kind of the well area. The nurse, Mrs. Leslie's nurse's station is actually going to be where kids with COVID symptoms go, where the sick go. Mr. Druid, I might let you speak to that a little bit more regarding the other details.
So, and just kind of thinking through, so we understand that sometimes when you scan someone with those non-touch thermometers, they read high, and so and sometimes that's just because of the kid ran, because he's running late, he's running to school, and I got my temperature up. We're gonna ask them to step aside, take 5 minutes, go scan them again. If they would also exhibit a fever then, we would radio for our school nurse. She has a oral read thermometer, which is more accurate, and take their temperature with that. Fever, we're gonna escort them around the outside of the building to cut down on any sort of interaction with kids, and then enter in the backside of the nurse's station, really to try to limit, or it could be through the front doors, to limit the amount of exposure we have to other kids. And that's gonna be a lot going on at one time, but, and then have them there with our school nurse.
Okay, how are the kids supposed to know where to go the first day?
Yeah.
They've never been in the building.
So we are working with our communications director on filming some videos on, especially for our kindergartners, what that entrance looks like, even with some of these protocols in place, and so that they know kind of that pathway to get there. We're also working to explore, so if I'm in kind of a more of a video throughout, if I'm in the first grade wing, how to get to the first grade wing, how to get to the second grade wing, this is the third grade wing. The good part is that for those kids that have been in the building, we do have Amity families where they have buddies in the upper grades or in different grades, so they kind of they've seen some of those different aspects of the building, and they, although not exactly familiar, they know where some of those places are.
And I will add, even on a normal year, the first day of school, we have a lot of adults that are in that lobby, and especially the kindergarten kids, they're in that first wing. They come into the lobby. I've been in there to start the school year most of the 8 years that I've been here now to start the school year. And we'll be helping those kids and guiding them along and pointing them in the right direction. I don't foresee any kid wandering aimlessly that first day.
My understanding is we're going to have 5-day K under either scenario. Is that correct?
So the proposal this evening, whether we go with, and I have 2 hybrid models, again, based on the conversation, I'll recommend one of them. And both of them, I am recommending a half-day kindergarten, AM and PM, for multiple reasons. But yeah, so I would be recommending an AM and PM kindergarten.
Okay, I know we haven't discussed the actual start hours yet because we're still trying to get that under control. But I do have another question about, and this is certainly something that's applicable to me personally, is that what happens when the children of a teacher arrives early if they come in with their parent? Where do they go?
Well, I know we have several teachers at Amity who have kids that go to Amity. What we've discussed is that, if teacher so-and-so has 1 or 2 kids, they can come sit next to them at their desk in their classroom until it's time to go, because teachers get there early. I know in your situation, Mr. Godwin, where your daughter teaches at the high school, but she has 2 kids at Amity. Unfortunately, we don't have a holding area this year because we're not mixing kids. So, we would ask those families to make arrangements so that their kids get there on time.
Right. When was the last time that we completed a deep clean of the buildings?
Mr. Conover, I'll look for you for that answer. When was the last time we disinfected our building?
It's ongoing. We do it daily.
That's ongoing. We've been in the building since March. We've been cleaning since March. It's pretty much an ongoing task.
Okay. How do we stand on the desk shields? We were supposed to get desk shields for all the.
I'll let Mr. Conover talk to that too.
K through 12, is that what
Right.
we're-
Well, and I'll interject here, we could certainly purchase more desk shields. We initially purchased desk shields we were going to purchase for every grade level that had tables, which I think was K through 3. And then we expanded that to have a desk shield for even the independent desks. at Amity. There are a couple classrooms at the high school that also have tables. I think 3 classrooms at the high school that have tables, which we purchased desk shields for. And, you know, again, looking at social distancing, looking at the mask wearing, if we feel more comfortable with shields, if the board feels more comfortable with shields on every desk at the high school, we can certainly up that order. You know, there is obviously a hefty price tag with opening schools during a pandemic, and especially with ordering shields, but, you know, if that's a board's recommendation, we can go all the way K to 12 with desk shields. That's not a problem.
Okay. On Wednesdays, just so that we put all the rumors to bed, the teachers are actually going to be working on Wednesdays, right?
It's funny you say that because I've heard a lot of comments that, you know, teachers are essential workers and they need to be working. Well, I've got news. Any plan that we go with, the teachers are going to be working, and they're going to be working incredibly hard every single day.
Right.
Yes.
So they're going to have to put the roulette wheels back.
Say that again?
You're going to have to put the roulette wheels back.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Finally, when we're making changes at the classroom, who's actually cleaning the classrooms when the change takes place? This is primarily at the high school, but it also happens at some of the elementary grade levels where you've got classes switched. How are they getting clean between classes?
Yeah, I'll let our building principal speak to that.
Yeah, so we've made some adjustments in terms of that cleaning process between classes. Our teachers are going to be leading the charge on that. It does, obviously it cuts down on our academic time, unfortunately, but, you know, to make sure that we come in with clean desks, we're going to ask them to help us with that.
And in our cleaning schedule, our custodians are hitting every classroom, I think twice a day. Dave?
Yeah, that's the idea.
And
That's K through 12.
now, again, we will lean on, for example, at the high school, we've talked about, we know at the elementary school, it's a little different. You know, we've had questions about, well, are kids allowed using the spray chemicals, you know, at the elementary school? Is that safe for them? You know, we understand that problem at the elementary school. So we've kind of backed off on that. We may be asking outside of when our custodians are in there, if there is a transition, asking with assistance from our teachers. But at the high school, we're going to rely on our kids and our teachers to help with that between transitions with classes, because you're transitioning so much and there are so many classrooms, you can't possibly have a custodian in every classroom in between classes every time. That would be impossible. So we're leaning on our, you know, and we've actually had a discussion and we felt like it was safer. We said if it was us, we'd rather be responsible for wiping down our own table. So if the kids leaving the classroom spray the desk, or the teacher, as the kids leave, spray the desk. As a kid, I come in and get a towel, wipe my own desk down. I feel much more comfortable because I know that it's been wiped down and it's wiped down thoroughly.
So you've had this you've had this conversation with the teachers, and they're all fine with doing that?
Well, yeah, actually, it was their idea.
Okay, that's kinda
Yeah,
wanted
we
to make sure.
we were gonna
But it's
do
zoning, okay.
where they, on the way out, they were gonna spray and the students were gonna wipe down their own desk, and a teacher said, well, if we do that, won't they just be sitting back there? You know, yeah, that makes sense. You know, so when the kids get up, the bell rings, the teachers will come around and spray it, and yeah, that was one of our teachers' ideas.
And there'll be numerous paper towel things for kids stuff.
Yeah,
I
yep.
mean, yeah.
They'll have to be
I
supplied
know I
with those.
sound trivia, but
Is there going to be some sort of pre-planned or possibility of short mask breaks for the students?
That's a great question. We don't know yet. The order, the governor gave basically his intent on the order last Tuesday. And he said the Ohio Department of Health would be releasing that order. And I've checked every day. I checked multiple times today. And the Ohio Department of Health has still not released the mask order and the details of the mask order. You know, we would hope that there's an opportunity for a quick pull down of your mask or a mask break. But right now, what I heard from the governor and what I read from the American Academy of Pediatricians that put out the statement, it sounds like they're requiring the masks all day, and it doesn't really give any leeway for breaks. So,
Couple more questions. One, who's responsible for quarantine tracing?
For quarantine tracing,
Yeah, the tracing process.
we actually will be assigned a tracer from the Hamilton County Public Health Department.
Okay,
Now, we will assist with that, obviously.
okay. And we have a number of building subs that we have hired. What is the plan to use them if they are not in one of the classrooms?
So if we have a district sub who is not needed
Right.
because of,
Because everybody shows up.
well, that doesn't happen during a normal year. And I'm not being funny, I'm
Well, I
being
know.
serious.
No,
It doesn't happen
yeah.
during a normal year, and we don't perceive that happening this year. If hypothetically, everybody is well, and we have a dedicated sub who is here every single day and doesn't have a classroom, we'll find lots of things for them to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm a deep thinker here. I want to know, we don't have a starting time yet for kids, okay? And I assume that we'll have that shortly. But what is, then, we're going to be flexible on tardies, like, we're not going, how is that going to work? Like, because we're just we're coming into the building, we're taking temperatures, normally you come in 10 minutes before the class starts. How is that going to look as far as teachers sharing the attendance they have and lunch counts and that? How is that going to look?
I think we got to be very flexible to start the
Oh,
year.
great. Okay.
Obviously, and just like, again, any normal year, I think, on the first day, we don't hammer kids on attendance, or even the second day. We got to figure out these are going to be brand new routines for us. We've got to figure out our routines, our processes. Eventually, when we have our systems down and we know how long it takes kids to get through the temperature check, we know how long it takes them to get to their homeroom. When we have our systems down, then we can be a little bit more, we can be a little bit more direct with, you got to abide by these timelines. If we know that kids have plenty of time to be in there by 8:15 at the high school, well, then we'll hold them accountable. But we got to figure out our processes
Well,
first.
I was just concerned too, because when kids come and they walk and things like that, you have to have that attendance in rather quickly so that we know we don't have a child MIA out in the public somewhere. And when do you think we'll know when time schools are starting?
Well, if the board votes to go to a hybrid model, whatever model it might be, we'd hope to let our community know that within the next day or two.
Okay, so we'll.
Along with a lot of the other details, we'll, and I mentioned this to Mr. Snyder, our Director of Communications. He's already got teed up. I said, if the board decides to choose a virtual model, I said, or if we stay the same, I said, I want to have things ready to go so that either tomorrow morning, late tonight, we can fire things out. But know that whatever direction we go, we're going to be firing all cylinders to get all those details out, because now we know what we're doing. Hopefully. I will say, I'll add this caveat like I always have, plans can always change. But we'll have a little bit more direction.
Will there still be a need for the potential high school to change their time schedule because of the lunch if we go to a hybrid model, so you have fewer kids?
Yeah, we talked about that last
that?
week, and if you have fewer kids, I think we said we don't really, we could condense the lunches so that time, backing up that time is not as necessary, but I'm going to let Mr. Hartley talk to that.
Yeah, after our meeting last week, we took our 6 lunch schedule and I tweaked it and changed it to a 4 lunch schedule, shared it with our administrators, and if we stick to that, we should be able to start and end at the same times.
But will lunch be whatever?
Won't
what's
be
the
as
earliest
early.
one? It won't be as
No,
early.
it won't be as
Okay.
early. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but we pushed it back to close to 11 for the
Okay.
first lunch.
Thanks.
I haven't seen any discussion on this from the governor or anybody, but I assume that we will still be responsible for holding fire drills and tornado drills and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And then, so if we're doing that, we're going to need to cover both sessions, whether it's AABB or AM/PM, we're going to have to cover both sessions.
Correct.
Those things.
So if we were in a fire drill on Tuesday, September 8th with our A group, we'd have to do it on Thursday, September 10th with our B group.
Do we have to do it in August because we're not starting back, sorry, we don't have to do a fire drill do we have to do a fire drill in August because we will have students there?
Not necessarily. You have to have a certain number of fire drills in the year, and you have
A
to
year,
have one
okay.
within the first 10 days of school.
First 10 days?
So not necessarily.
So what she's saying is it could go to the first couple of days of September if we had.
Well, that's fine. I didn't know if the rule was still applicable, that you had to have one every month you were in school. That's.
How many teachers do we have currently who will not be coming back next year for one reason or another?
I'll let Dr. Borso address that one too.
Right now, we have 3 confirmed, and one that I am speaking with this evening, who I imagine will be our 4th. So right now, the plan is that it's 2 at Amity and 2 at the junior senior high school. So the plan is that the 2 at Amity will do the Accelerate curriculum, and we'll still be able to work remotely, and then the 2 at the junior senior high school will do Apex.
Do we have subs for them, do we have subs to cover their rooms? Because they're going to be like long-term, all-year subs.
One at
I was going to jump in there. At the high school, one is already hired and covered.
Right.
The other one, we just confirmed that we would need for Accelerate or for Apex at the high school. And that's kind of a specialty curriculum. It's one of our elective teachers.
Okay.
And so that one's going to be a little challenging to fill. At the elementary level, we have, I think,
We do have 2 openings at the elementary school. We filled one today. We interviewed last week, and we're waiting on reference calls. I've got calls out checking on another candidate.
What about the second position then?
That would be the one I'm waiting on those reference calls for.
we've already offered to one of those elementary positions. And the second one, we're waiting on the reference calls,
Okay.
which is great for us. And I was encouraged. Josh and Michelle interviewed last week, and they both said they had 2 really good candidates, which makes me happy from the elementary level. That, obviously, if things change, and again, the virus miraculously disappears, and our teachers who are teaching the remote are able to come back, we could look, and they want to come back, we would obviously have to get that remote covered somehow, unless the kids decide, at the end of the semester they want to come back. There would be some intricacies there about how we can bring them back, because we've talked about that, and you said, well, could the teacher come back? They do have a responsibility on the remote. Obviously, we want our teachers that we know are awesome teachers to be here when we can get them here, but
So we're hiring them as sub-teachers, we're not hiring them as contract teachers?
they're substitute teachers for the year,
Substitute
long-term substitutes, for as long as we need them.
Okay.
Can you maybe speak to why why we're thinking hybrid again, when bigger school districts are going 5 days? Just reiterate why we're kind of thinking a hybrid model is the best model as far as teachers, payment for having sub coverage, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. We do know, and you mentioned some schools are coming back full-time. It runs the gamut. A lot of schools are doing many different things. Some are coming back full-time, some are coming back, some are just going remotely totally. Others are coming back hybrid, where they bring groups in just like we are on AA, off, BB. I know of 2 schools that are doing exactly like we're proposing here. Another school's bringing in 3 groups of students at a time during the day at 3 different staggered times. Another school's doing AM and PM. So it really is all over the map. The one thing that I heard from the Board of Education last Tuesday that I think was very consistent about why we want to go this model is that we know the importance of having our kids in front of our teachers. And we want to be able to do that and continue that, having kids in front of our teachers for as long as we possibly can without having to go to a remote learning style, because we know not just academically, we know academically being in front of your teachers is best, but from a social emotional standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, they need to be with their peers, even if it's not all of them. even if it's just half of them, they need to be with their peers and they need to be able to see teachers. And so the idea is, if we went hybrid, and this is what I took out of last board meeting, we might be able to sustain an in-person instruction much longer than we would if all of a sudden we bring all of our kids back without being able to social distance, you know, with some kids being right next to each other, and then all of a sudden having a bunch of cases pop positive, and then us having to pivot and go to a remote learning platform. Did I sum that up correctly?
Yes, you did, and I think that when the group that chose to look at this, and we were hoping to go back for the 5 days a week, that was early July, before the numbers escalated the way they have. So I think I was very naive in it. You can ask Jay, and I was, you know, selling everybody my water that we're coming back 5 days a week, you know, and then you look at what's going on, and my goal is that for the long run of this year, whether it's 150 days of it or 120 days of it, that our kids are able to be back full-time with their teachers.
And I will add this, you know, I heard the comments several times through emails and comments to the board through our forum. Well, Hamilton County went from red to orange last week. We were on a call, superintendents were on a call, and Commissioner Kessler was on there, and I believe it was less than 1% from what took us from red to orange. And that, you know, early on, the conversations were that we're going to be in red for a pretty long time. Well, we got a less than 1% difference between red and orange. It flipped us to orange, which could flip us back to red at any given time. You know, originally we tried to line the current plan, and this was brought up from parents. Well, your original plan said you're going to go hybrid the first 2 weeks and then bring every kid back September 8th, and you had the Hamilton County or the state of Ohio color coding system, and it said yellow and orange, we're going to be in person 5 days a week, red, possible hybrid, and purple, possible remote. Well, to Chris's comment, we've seen what happened. We saw what happened with the school. I think Atlanta schools might be shut down at this point. We saw what happened in Georgia. We're seeing what's happening with Major League Baseball, and when you're bringing just baseball teams together, people popping positive at a crazy rate. And we see that, and we don't want that to happen here. We feel like we can always bring kids back, but if we were to come back full time and then have to go remote because we have cases popping everywhere, it's going to be hard to bring those kids back. It's hard to come back from all in to remote and then come back to all in. It's a lot easier, as we've said before, to crawl, walk, run. Let's start out, see what it's like. Let's get our kids back in here 50%, learn all of our procedures. We'll review it constantly. And if we're good and Hamilton County's going down, we want to get our kids back in here as soon as possible. That's what we're going to do, if hybrid's a model that we choose.
So I guess the next thing, kind of as a board, we have two models here, so we kind of need to decide, are we going hybrid? Is that kind of where we're leaning? And if so, we need some discussion between the two plans as far as what are thoughts between AA, off BB, or all the kids every day, half-day learning, because we haven't really touched on that.
So we're going to base that on your recommendation?
I would like to know what you guys think before I make my recommendation.
I haven't told you? I guess I haven't picked a plan.
I mean, I think what I gathered from our individual conversations and what I gathered from the last board meeting, it's why we spent the last 6 work days pivoting towards a hybrid model and trying to flesh out those details, is because that was the direction I was given to the last board meeting. So I felt like the general consensus was we need to move towards a hybrid model. Now the question is, which one?
And no one's going to speak, because I
Well,
think
I'm
we're all
gonna-
feeling we don't know, there is no good answer.
Well, I am going to
mean, it's-
speak because I asked Mr. Hartley how this was going to look at the high school. And I am concerned about a morning class of first and second and maybe third bell, then the afternoon, maybe fourth and fifth bell, and then the next day sixth. I mean, I don't know how that would work, but that is a concern to me, that if you miss a day, you really miss a lot. And two, I don't know how that works at the high school. That really is concerning to me. And Shane, what are your thoughts?
No pressure.
You have one of two choices. You can say in the morning we're going all 7 classes for about 25 minutes each. As a teacher, I don't know if that idea makes a lot of sense. By the time you get everyone settled in, you're pretty much rotating to your next class. And then you try to repeat the same thing with the same exact content in the afternoon. So that's why what we would look at is kind of rotating days where, again, it's almost, and maybe the best comparison I can think of is like going to a college, where you're not necessarily taking the same class every single day, but you're checking in every other day. And so, one day on a Monday, you might get bells 1, 2, 3, 4, and on a Tuesday, you might get bells 5, 6, 7, and an advisory period, and then you would rotate that every other day.
And I guess if you're a junior or senior, I'm okay with that, where we're talking our 12-year-olds in 7th grade and going over and doing that. I mean, until you made that comment, I really hadn't thought about, I was weighing both options, so I'm just sharing that right now. I think that's half our school district that were in 7th and 8th grade.
And again,
and ninth.
the flip side is that student sees, a 7th grader has English class Monday and Tuesday for 45 minutes, but then is not necessarily in that class until the following Monday and Tuesday also. So it's, I think we've said from the beginning, as soon as you fix one solution, it presents another one. So, I think there's pros and cons each way.
Well played.
Well, and I think that's a great point. As we've vetted internally every scenario, especially over the last week, kind of in overdrive, because as you guys know, our first recommendation, we didn't have a hybrid model as one of our options. Our options were come back full-time with a hybrid the first 2 weeks to get used to the processes, and then come back full-time, or remote learning. So over this last week, as we've really put our minds to what a hybrid model looks like, there are pros and cons, as Shane said. For every solution, it poses another problem, and vice versa. And I know I'm hearing that feedback from parents too. Even parents that support a hybrid model, there's parents that don't support it, there's parents that do support it, but then even the ones that support it, well, if you did this, then this is a problem. But if you did it this way, that this is a problem. There are pros and cons. There's no perfect answer, and there's going to be things that our parents have to work through if we go to a hybrid solution of either model. Now, I think we talked about this early on, but the conversations last week, and I'll just reiterate, we feel like if you look at what I've given to you, version 1, which is the extending what we have done, what we have planned for the first 2 weeks, from a health and safety standpoint, we feel like that's the best option. The other piece is that I've heard from parents is, hey, we've planned for the first 2 weeks already, and we could easily replicate that. It would be difficult for us then to transition to an AM, PM, and try to figure out daycare or childcare. So that is obviously, when we think about this, we think about it from everyone's perspective, but we definitely think about our parents' perspective, and it poses challenges, whatever model we go with. So, Ms. Huster, to finish your comments, are you advocating for a certain version 1? That's what I'm taking out of it.
I'm advocating for my other board members to speak up and tell me what they think too. I honestly feel like I have a question, and I guess maybe it's not going through my brain right. If we do the morning and afternoon, how many more kids will our teachers see at the high school than they would see if we did the AB thing? And maybe it's the same number and I just can't see that. Is there a difference? Let's just go with there is a difference.
They're all saying no.
No, you're too,
I mean, I'll be honest, that question hasn't been brought up yet. So, I mean, I could, think through it in 10 minutes and get you an answer. But in terms of minutes and contact points, I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, if you're thinking every other day,
no, I'm thinking I don't know what I'm thinking. Never mind. I'm done.
okay. I could run the numbers for you if you want me to. Just off the top of my head, I don't know it.
I'm joking. You guys are.
Mrs. Kellums?
Me personally, as taking care of Logan, I would prefer the A/B, only because I know I could get him there in school. Like if I do, and here's the question too, like if it would be an AM PM, would you be allowed to pick AM or PM? Because I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be off work in time, and I can't trust him to get up and be up there and not be late.
Yeah, where we're at this time
So,
with our time constraints, we could do a lottery system, but we don't have, we would proceed with our split by alphabet, by last name. I did hear some feedback that said, hey, there's got to be, if you were to go AM, PM, could you think about certain kids and parents' work schedules and things like that? And it's just, that would be too difficult for 1,256 kids. Everybody has their own preferences, and our kids are starting in 2 weeks. And, could you back it up? Sure, you could. But now we're looking at hours, and how are we going to make up those hours? And, it would be difficult to do that.
Right. So with that being said, my preference would be the AB schedule.
Plan number one.
And I would also say that same thing goes for kindergarten. We didn't have our kindergarten readiness assessments before the school year like we typically do because of the COVID crisis, because of quarantining, teachers being out of town in different states, and other teachers actually being, having symptoms. And so we weren't able to bring kids in and really take a look at. So that's something that we're going to do in the first 2 weeks. But again, outside of a lottery system, it'd be too difficult to place kids based on parents' request for an AM or PM. So we would be looking at last names there as well. I do want to add a couple comments, as I'm looking at my proposals, whether it's a hybrid plan version 1 or version 2. Version 1 being the AA off BB, and version 2 being the AM PM. With both of these, one of the things I am going to recommend, if we get to that point, is that the teacher professional development days during the school year, so September 25th, November 3rd, January 4th, and February 16th, actually become student days. Because we have those extra days. We moved kids back a week to start. They went from August 17th, I think, to August 24th. And so we have some extra professional development at the beginning for our teachers. I want those to become student days so that we have some more instructional days. I will say that November 3rd, Tuesday, November 3rd, that's election day. We know this is a big election. There's going to be big turnout. We would not want to have our kids. Originally, we weren't having our kids in the building for that reason. We still wouldn't. Now they only use the career academies, and that's, again, not our choice because we're a public school building. They have the right to be able to use our facility. So obviously, following the election, we'd have to clean the career academies pretty thoroughly. That's where they would stay. They would not be all over our building. They would go into career academies and vote. But with that, I would propose that turns into a remote learning day so that we don't miss a student contact day. So it would look more like a Wednesday. So basically the A kids, if we went with version 1, who have school on Tuesday, November 3rd, they would be meeting remotely with their teachers that day. And that would be a teacher instruction day, not a teacher professional development day. So I did want to put that out there as well.
And I'm assuming, I hope it doesn't go this far, but like Thanksgiving would, Thursday, Friday. Well, usually I think they have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. So would you take then Monday would be the A group, Tuesday would be the B group?
So we looked at it through the first quarter. Labor Day was the only day that we really considered as saying, because we're off on Monday, September 7th, could Tuesday the 8th and Wednesday the 9th be the A group day, and then Thursday and Friday be the B group day? That's as far as we got. We want to make it equitable among our kids for when they have instructional times, so we would look at that and communicate that early on. Another example is that at the end of August, conference days. Conference days fall on Thursday, Friday. We may have to make some adjustments. Obviously, we need to communicate that out as soon as possible, but that's into the second quarter, and we didn't really look beyond the first quarter at this point. But we would want to make them equitable, so there could be some changes, like you said, that week of Thanksgiving, where Monday and Tuesday and then we're pretty much off every year. I think, again, this year, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday and Tuesday may have to be a split, one day A day, one day B day. Now, we'd communicate that early so that parents can make plans.
But we're hopeful we're going to be back 5 days, and that won't be an issue.
Fingers crossed.
That's where my head is.
Me too.
Well, to get the ball rolling, I'd recommend that we go with version 1.
Okay, hybrid version 1, which is an AA off BB.
Right.
Okay,
I would agree with that. There's no perfect answer.
No.
But in reading all of the comments that we got online, hearing other parents that I've talked to, just trying to process all of it, I feel like that is our best option at this time.
okay. Mr. Downey, you,
I would also agree with that. Just taking in all this information tonight, the last meeting we decided, we think we're gonna go with a hybrid plan. The going every day right now is not our situation. I really look to the leadership team to tell me what works best, whether it's the plan A or plan 2, or plan 1, plan 2, considering the day Conover and the cleaning and all the things. But I agree with Paul and Peggy, the plan 1, I think works best overall from what I can see.
thank you. Ms. Huster, I think I know where you stand, I think.
It's a difficult decision because I see both sides of it, but I'm going to go with the Plan 1 also, recognizing that we truly, truly hear everybody on this. And I think the longer we wait to make this decision, more people become afraid, and I don't want that happening.
Jay, one other thing, and you guys, your leadership team has done a phenomenal job communicating to not only us, the board members, but also to the public. I would suggest that as we gain information, we put together a fact sheet that's clearly, and maybe it's already out there, Jake, I don't know, but I assume as we start school, we're going to have new information on a daily basis that we can get out to the general public, to parents, so they understand what's happening in school, how did temperature checks go today, just kind of an overview of, because this is a thing that's going to change on a daily basis. Be very fluid, we all know that.
That's a great point.
And just communication in continuation of what you've already done.
That's a great point. I think, one of the things as you talk through that, that would be good is just a weekly briefing, maybe at the end of the week, to the parents, the community. How did school go this week? What did it look like? What things do we need to know? Obviously, some of that needs to be bound by HIPAA and FERPA. You can't give out details on COVID, who tested positive or who didn't, but just an overall picture of kind of the health of the district and where we're at.
I would like to recommend, and you're in charge of this, but I would like at the beginning of this thing that we're doing it every day. It doesn't have to be a long thing, but it just an update, because everything is so new. And even in that update, if we need to say, hey, cars are piling up at Amity, or just to let parents know that we are communicators and we do have their precious cargo. The other thing I want to ask is, when will the teachers get class lists? Because I'm thinking as soon as they're able to get class lists, then they can literally communicate with their parents. And I think that solves probably 85% of the anxiety that's going to happen.
Yeah, and just so you know, based on what I'm hearing, my recommendation, and when we get to that, I'll recommend it, will be the hybrid version 1. We will open up final forms for parents to go in and change their decision one way or another. If parents chose in-person schooling to start and they don't like the hybrid model because of consistency or whatever it might be, they can go ahead and choose remote at this time. We're going to open it up to switch either way until Friday. We will begin our class list right away with what we know, but we'll have those finalized. One of the things I do want to tell you is that we're going to ask, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Orso, Mr. Drewer, and Mr. Hartley, but we're going to ask our students and their parents to actually get into Schoology to see their class list, because it does two things for us. One, it takes a while, it takes 24 hours for once we have everything in Dazzle to upload into Schoology, but we want that to turn over. But we want our parents, not just our students, but our parents to know how to use Schoology, and we know all kids want to see their class list. So it's kind of going to force our parents to get into Schoology to bring that class list up, because we have many parents that have never logged into Schoology before. We can't hang class lists on the door. We can't, we can't have kids piled up in front of our school building checking out class lists. We know that's a tradition. We know our families and our kids like that. Again, that's something else that's going to look a little different this year. But the plan is to put those, as soon as we're ready, put those class lists on Schoology. We'll let parents know they're ready, get on, and then their class list will come up.
So the K through 6 parents know how to get on Schoology? Okay.
Not yet, but that's part of the plan. Dr. Orso is going to talk to that.
Sorry.
And that's
we
part of the
really
reason
haven't
that we're going to force the hand.
We're going to be sending out letters to all of the families with explanation of how to get on and their login credentials. And then Jake is also going to push out a communication with the links to take them directly there. And then Emily Schillig from Forward Edge is putting together a video to walk parents through it step by step. So there'll be lots of explanations.
So to both of your points, Paul said, no, they don't. We know they don't. And unless we kind of force that hand, they may not. If we had to pivot and go remote for whatever reason, even on the hybrid model, they will have to utilize Schoology. And so that's going to force them to log in and start to feel it out, because everybody's want to know what their class lists are. So they'll log in to see that. You still look confused, Ms. Huster.
Well, again, I'm going to just speak to the people that do not have the internet service and do not have the computers and the things to get on Schoology. So I think that when you send your letter out, you also have to have another way of them communicating with the school. So seriously, I do know of parents that do not have that. And I would think that, our English-speaking language, yeah.
There's an app as well, and Emily, whenever she does her video, is going to show parents how to access it from their phones, too.
And I will say
think
this, when we did the survey of our community, and Dr. Orso, while you're standing there, you know the number better than I do. When we did the survey of our community who did not have consistent, reliable internet access, how many families said that they did not?
I don't remember the number. It was very small.
It was like 2 or 3,
Yeah,
which is good.
Well,
can
and
count
that's
it on one
600
hand.
out of 1,200. So in reality, or 700 out of 1,200.
No, you're right. It's
So
it's 1,100 out of 1,256
that we.
that indicated they don't. So out of 1,100 people who have completed the school choice form, 2 or 3 of them have said they don't have reliable internet access. So we still have 156 kids or parents that we haven't heard from.
So you'll take care of that.
Yeah. Which is much better. I thought that was encouraging. That's much better than what I thought we had. I thought it was at least 10% from data that we've done in the past.
Jay, one more question. On the Plan 1, Wednesdays, I'm hearing that Wednesday's a deep clean, we're going to sanitize, where are the teachers going to be? Are they going to be working from home on those days?
No, we're asking our teachers to report. They'll be here in the building, and they'll be checking in with their kids. After the first 2 weeks, that Wednesday will be a remote day where we're asking our teachers to check in with their kids, meet with their classes. There will be time, again, for the deep cleaning for our custodial staff, but they'll be asked to be here at work. They're not going to work from home.
They will be handling like Zoom meetings, or they will be talking?
Google Hangouts?
Google Hangouts.
Yes.
And we're still having kindergarten on Wednesdays.
Correct.
We updated our website, correct, this year?
Yes, our website has been revamped.
Okay, and I heard some concern people couldn't get the app on their phone. Is there something different that you can?
Yeah, so we are actually part of the kind of rollout of the website is the app. I actually just got yesterday or over the weekend.
the templates for the app, which we'll approve. They'll be done very, very soon, so the app will be up and moving soon. The website is still mobile friendly, so if you go to the website on your phone, it looks nice and you can see everything that you need to see. But we will have the app hopefully by the end of this week, if not first thing next week.
Perfect, thank you. And how are extracurriculars looking? I mean, we're going hybrid, so we're saying that we shouldn't have groups of kids together. So both at Amity and at the high school, I mean, I know sports is kind of a different entity.
Yeah.
But what about some of the extracurriculars at Amity? How will those look?
Yeah, well, you're right. And you say extracurriculars, and then, the gears start turning another way because sports is different. Right now, they have sports designated as contact, non-contact. Non-contact can do certain things. Contact can do certain things. But in order to play games, they have to have, right now, currently negative COVID tests within the past 72 hours, which is not attainable for any school district in the state of Ohio. The governor's saying that wasn't intended for prep sports. Has not rescinded that order yet. So that's one big ball of wax. Mm-hmm. Extracurriculars on the other side, we would like to be able to do them, but I think we need to push them back. We also need to be able to keep kids, contained within a certain amount. We could also look at doing some of these things virtually. So, those need to be extra. Our big task was to figure out how we're rolling out school first. So we spent most of our time, effort, and energy around what the opening of school looks like. Mm-hmm. We know extracurriculars are an important part of a kid's experience. And so we want to be able to provide those extracurriculars if we can. We want to push that back again, and Mrs. Huster and I have talked about this, being able to push those extracurriculars back a few weeks, the start of, things like chess club or games club, those types of things. We want to be able to push those back. We want to see how things go, first of all, and then figure out logistically what we can do and what we can't do. Because again, the last thing we want to do is bring a mix of kids together who could potentially expose each other cross grade level or even cross the building.
We had that conversation, and I was saying because fiscally we're paying people to do those jobs. I mean, we've approved their contracts to do this. So I just had talked to Jay about the fact that what if we would decide, the group at Amity that does, we got the chess club and the STEM projects and things, that they set it up with kids that want to do it, and then they would do it online after school. So, whatever time we choose to go home, then, 3:45 or 3:50, that you are going to be meeting with whatever writing club or whatever, and you will then be spending your half-hour time being able to be part of that on Google Hangout or something like that.
Again, we're not going to make decisions for our teachers, that run these clubs. We obviously will help aid and guide and assist in the thinking about how this could roll out, but ultimately we're going to lean on them, just like I'm leaning on our band and choir teachers to give us something creative so that we can have band and choir, because we know kids want to have that. We're going to lean on their expertise and also their passion for what they're doing to figure out the best ways to do this while we're also keeping our kids safe. But we need to think through that quite a bit.
So none of that is going to start immediately so that we can focus on the academic piece?
Correct. I don't envision that. I don't know if Mr. Dreward or Mr. Hartley have had any other comments, but would you agree? Yes. Mr. Hartley, he was lost. He agrees, though. And Mr. Dreward gave me a thumbs up. So.
I think it's a great comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the board? I've heard from every one of you now as far as what you feel will be best. Any other comments before we move to the next part of the agenda?
I just want parents to understand, and hopefully, and most they do, what a hard decision this is for us to speak for them. We're trying to give all the options that we can to allow them, so if they don't feel comfortable, we do have the remote. I just hope they realize and appreciate and understand there is no good answer, and we realize that, and we wish we could do everything for everyone, but we're just going with, the best knowledge that we have right now.
And I will say, obviously, I have received a lot of feedback from our community, from our parents, from our teachers. And I would say for the most part, all of them have expressed their thanks and gratitude to the administrative team, to the Board of Education, because they realize it's not an easy decision. They realize that there is no perfect answer or solution. And while they may have opinions about what they feel is best, at the end of the day, most of them have said, I will support whatever it is you guys decide. You know, it may not be what I would have chose, but I understand that there's varying opinions on this, and this decision is very, very difficult. You know, there were some that did not express that were very adamant about what they felt was right and why we should do what we should do. And I don't blame them. You know, they're advocating for their kids, and they're passionate about their kids, and they should be. But I think at the end of the day, most people understand the position we're in, and they're just happy that we're going to try to make it an effort to get our kids in here, to be able to keep them here for as long as possible.
Yes, and I do want to say thank you to all those parents who have reached out so that we could hear some different opinions, because that always helps. Everybody has a little bit different perspective that really helps us internalize all of it and take all of that into consideration. So just want to say thank you to all those, and teachers and everyone that has, you know, reached out and voiced their opinion. We do appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything else before we move on to recommendations of the superintendent? All right.
Okay, I'd have one recommendation this evening, and that recommendation is to approve the Deer Park Community City Schools Reopening Plan, 2020 Hybrid Plan Version 1, which keeps the same start date from a calendar perspective of August 24th. We will attend in groups A and Group B. Group A will attend Mondays, Tuesdays, Group B Thursdays and Fridays. It also has kindergarten coming AM, PM, 5 days a week. And it also moves September 25th, November 3rd, January 4th, and February 16th from professional development days for teachers to student days. So I recommend that you approve Hybrid Plan Version 1 with the modified calendar dates.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Do you need to put in there about the Labor Day, Tuesday, or wanting to go on Wednesday or Tuesday instead of? No? Wednesday instead of? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you mean, and I will add that additional calendar update that we would have a day on Tuesday, September 8th, and Wednesday, September 9th, and a B day on Thursday, September 10th, and Friday, September 11th, just to make it clear.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving the reopening 2020 hybrid plan version 1, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your thoughts. You know, over the last couple of weeks, I know you guys have all individually been agonizing over what is best for our kids and our community. So I appreciate the work that you put into this. We're paid for this. You guys aren't really paid for this, and you're spending a lot of time on it. So I appreciate you doing your best to make the right decision for all of our kids and our families. So thank you.
Thank you.
Conversely, I'd like to make sure that the administrative team knows the board appreciates all the efforts that they've put in every day, many times during the evening or on weekends to answer our questions so we could make this decision. And we certainly appreciate your work.
I'll echo that, Paul. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I'm smiling.
Thanks, Paul.
We have no need for executive session this evening, so I would like a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all so much, those that joined us. And we're going to have a great plan for you, and we're going to do the best we can, and it's going to be a great school year.
Thank you.